Okay, today we are going to talk about Slack and what I perceive as Slack's approach to product management. And we're going to use two examples of features, Save for Later and Huddles, to explain this. And there's lots of ways. Being a product manager is extremely difficult. There's lots of ways that you can develop new features. You could talk to users. This is the traditional approach. You could do market research. You could do what a behavioral scientist does and do a behavioral diagnosis, do an A/B test, study the psychologies driving your users. And I think what Slack does, and I would argue Peloton too, is a little bit closer to the latter, which is they're studying what people do and then building features around that. Shocking. But I heard about this codified from Peloton's VP of PM, David Packles, in an interview I did with him. He basically said, look, we launched this feature called stacking based on seeing people already do this in the app. And so stacking is basically just you do a 10-minute arm workout and then you do a 30-minute bike ride. And people were naturally doing this. And so Slack created a feature called stacking, which made it easier for people to do the thing they were already doing. And what that did is help the people who were already doing it do it easier, and help the people who weren't doing it get exposed to that behavior. Very clever. And so what I think Slack is doing in its product management is some of the same, where Save for Later is basically an answer to what we all were struggling with, which is, look, I see a message, I can't do anything right now. And so what users were likely doing, or data point one, click mark unread, and now you have this to-do list based on your unreads. And so this is behavior that people were already doing that by creating this Save for Later feature, and by the way, the Slack PM joked it took them 10 years to do it, so maybe they should have paid attention a little sooner to this, but they have now an area, and let me show you, and have an area where you can see all the things that you have to do. So basically what this looks like is this is a Slack channel. I can click Save for Later. We'll do this with a couple things, Save for Later. And now this is in my to-do list. So it's, by the way, the ordering not great because it's unclear kind of how the order should be, but I would have maybe assumed that the things that I'd put on there first would be higher up. So, and Save for Later, I'm not promoting this as the answer to all of our to-do lists and productivity problems. In fact, talked to a PM at LinkedIn a couple years ago, and she said, look, the Save for Later feature for LinkedIn jobs actually backfired, where if you are applying to a job and you want to save it for later, the idea is, yeah, applying for jobs is difficult. You may not be able to do it immediately, put it in a list and come back to it. And it turns out when you do that, you don't come back to it. So you say, I'm going to do it tomorrow, and tomorrow is never. And so it's possible that by putting all this stuff in a list and it's not that visible, that we would actually maybe not be as adherent to our to-do list. But I do like that, they're trying to get us to think about this. The mental model is not just Save for Later, dump things. They're trying to complete. And so they're signaling like, actually, this is something that you should be regularly maintaining and you should be regularly doing something with. So that's the first feature. The second feature that Slack has successfully done this with is huddles. So if I want to call Phil, I can say huddle. Now, a huddle is a meeting. A huddle is a great rebrand of meetings. And so what they're doing is saying, hey, in this written platform by which you are communicating in an async way, you may want to take it to a meeting. And so they created something of their own called huddles, which again is a meeting. And so they're doing what we already were doing, which is reading something and having to call someone, to discuss it, codifying it, making it easier for people to do it, and putting their little spin on it, right? A rebrand or a different mental model of huddle. Quite nice. It makes me think that I'm just not in a meeting.